the idea being that like you might have had a repetitive mind before. And so even when you go, okay, check in with your mind, and then you go, I really don't have anything there. Excellent. Like that, I mean, because it's not sedated and it's not that you're like suppressing thoughts, it's that the mind is regulated and you're more in an observation mode rather than the bap, the monkey mind where it's just like,
Yeah.
and what about this? And what about that? And then tomorrow I'm gonna, like we all have that from time to time. But the more that we can step away from it, even when you're being intellectual, you'll be a better intellectual person if the mind is quiet and regulated, because you won't get like tricked by going down weird rabbit holes and distractions and things like that. And so like the concentration becomes more one pointed, but in that one pointedness, it also produces a greater level of potential awareness. And so, you know, the emotions being regulated, um, you know, there's always things brewing in the body a little bit, but the more we do these processes, they flesh out. But if you don't have like emotions filling up or weird tension, I mean, you would know you would be going, okay, I feel peaceful, and then your mind would bounce somewhere. And so that you're able just to sit and go, I really don't have any strong emotions or um, that's quite good.
Well, so I keep feeling like, am I kidding myself? Like, am I, since I don't have any particular feelings, I, you know,
Right.
so I guess I'm trying to second guess myself or
You
something.
know, there is kind of like a clinical name for that. And um, I think the clinical name is called inner peace.
Mm.
And it's a peaceful state, but we get so used to that was my old joke with clients back in the day. I was
Yeah.
like, it's called inner peace. But it's like we get so used to being like, when it goes away, you're like, something's wrong. I mean, I literally used to, I went through a year about a year doing this. Is something wrong with me? Because like I should be upset about this, and I'm kind of not.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so, like, what's wrong with me? And so, you know, it took me a while to realize, like, oh, I just don't have the stress response that I did, and I feel more peaceful than I used to. And it's not that like a situation would be upsetting, but I could see that it was upsetting without getting riled up. And so I talked this out with a spiritual teacher, and the teacher had a very surprising answer. And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, and he's listening to me. And then he goes, but it does present a problem that like sometimes when you're in a group or like you're with your family and everybody's all upset at something and then you're not." He goes, people will perceive that as that you don't care.
Mm.
And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, so you have to pretend to be upset sometimes. Like, oh, and the pretending was just like, that's so upsetting. That is so upsetting. He goes, you don't have to, lose your emotions or, throw a fit or cry. You can validate that it's upsetting and then just be calm. But he said, you know, people around might not understand while you're not reacting because he said the average person reacts. And what's happening is your reaction levels are going down. And so then you can kind of cognitively process things a little bit more. And you can go, yeah, that's upsetting, but I don't have to lose my mind because it's upsetting. And so I think it's normal to question yourself. And I think that if this was some sort of like checkout or dissociation or something like that, you wouldn't be questioning yourself.
Ah,
You wouldn't be going, you know, like there's this old saying, like you ask a person, "Are you a good man?" And if they go yes, it's probably not. But if the person goes like, "Oh, I don't know," like time will tell. That's what a good man says. You know what I mean? Like they're
yeah,
questioning themselves. They're like, "Oh God, I'm not sure." Like I hope I'm a good man, but like the one that confidently says, "Of course I'm a good man," probably not the best guy. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And so even if you look at it from the point of view that you're questioning that state, means that it's not a defense mechanism, it's not a coping mechanism, it's something genuine, and it's something that you're trying to make sense out of, but you're not necessarily in a reactive place. And so, I'd say over the years in therapy, there was times where um through the processes, people would begin to have like a kind of inner peace, and it flipped them out a little bit. They really saw it as a condition that needed to be resolved rather than this is what inner peace feels like. Because, like, if you think about it, the solar plexus loves the roller coaster ride. The ups and the downs, the ups and the downs, and the ups and the downs. This is horrible. Oh, I'm so upset. So really, the solar plexus doesn't even really care from the point of view of the solar plexus if it's a bad up or that you're upset. It loves how the solar plexus feels alive is the ups and the downs. And so when you start to calm it down and it starts to get regulated, the solar plexus just kind of sits there and just goes, well, this is kind of boring. Like who am I if I'm not going up or down? Like, what this whole even keel thing, I don't know who I am, right? I mean, I've gone through that. Like, but again, I would reinforce that you're even questioning your feeling is there has to be kind of a state of calmness before you hit like deeper levels of the mind or even deeper levels of emotion.
Mhm.
Because as you go deeper into the emotion, superficial emotion is a lot of the homeostatic emotions, anger, fear, anxiety. And as
Right.
we start to go deeper and deeper into, experiencing those astral components, there's a deeper level of activation of the heart. And the deeper level of activation of the heart really is very, very, very quiet. It's very quiet. And, it's kind of a weird thing. Like you have to kind of calm the emotions to be able to experience that because it's really, if you think about like how we talk about like homeostatic emotion and your stress response and instinctive responses and that of the mind, really for us to genuinely experience an activated heart is you have to be able to move beyond the physiology.
Mm.
And so much of what we think about is like our mind, and our mind affects our body and emotion. But really, even the idea of the work program
Hmm.
is really setting up a potential for you to go beyond the physiology. Like, and as you go beyond the physiology, you start to enter into more of this like astral realm where it's, maybe in the early stages, it can be a little chaotic and things, but eventually you get to this place where the heart just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The peace and the stillness keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, it's just that calmness that you have, it's like it's good, but it's still a stepping stone to something greater. It's like, the class we're doing, was it next weekend or the aligning with the guardian angel?
Hmm.
It's really about the more that we align with, the guardian angel isn't like an angel like how we think of Michael or Raphael. Like it's this angel that kind of helps guide us through our journey, be it in the body and out of the body. It's an angel of the presence. We don't really know the name of the angel. It's the angel of the presence.
Mm.
And really for us to even be able to have an alignment with that, there has to be a kind of calmness that comes over us. Because otherwise, we're just being driven by our physiology and our lower nature and our instinctive responses. And in certain mystical practices, they say, until you really align with a guardian angel, you really don't get to experience like the higher realms or your higher nature. And part of
Uh-huh.
it is like the guardian angel kind of guides you through the issues of your physiology and kind of guide you even as you start to enter into that astral realm. You know, maybe the very first tasting of the astral realm is driving through the bad neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like that's where nightmares happen and bad dreams and whatever. And then you kind of get through the bad neighborhood, and then all of a sudden it's like, this is nice. This is really nice. And then it just kind of keeps getting nicer and nicer. And then at some point, you're bringing it back into the body, not just when you have those expanded states. And, calming all the agitation down and calming down the emotions and calming down the mind. If we don't do that, we don't experience those other things. Like there's no way to experience them because there's just too much agitation. We don't, if those things aren't calmed down, like certain emotional, mental, and energetic processes don't engage. Like in the stillness, there's always the seed for greater spiritual activity. Like if even if it's just emotional stillness, the seed for greater mental activity is there. But then when the mind kind of starts going calmer, the seed for greater spiritual activity is there. And then it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so with without the calmness, without the stillness, we really don't have a sense of well-being. We don't have a sense of who we are. We don't have a sense of oneness. You could say our disconnection from our higher self is is really a byproduct of not being able to experience stillness. And once we start experiencing stillness, our mind tries to make sense out of that, but it's something beyond the senses. So the intellect doesn't really have a reference point. And so as you start going through and you're doing these processes and you go, I'm not really feeling emotions. Am I doing it right? Um, you know, if it was a coping mechanism, you'd go, I don't feel emotions. I'm amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Like you'd kind of go to this place of like grandeur or something. But like when you're going, boy, I feel peaceful, but am I not getting it? Or like what's going on? Like that means you're being aware, you're being real. Like it's like, okay, there's things happening, there's processes happening. And the thing is that we don't always know what the next step is. And so you gotta send out the email and wait for the response, and then eventually we
Yeah.
go, oh yeah, there's deeper levels of this peace. There's deeper levels of this stillness. There's deeper levels of, uh, whatever those experiences are.
That's really reassuring, because I mean, my default is to think, oh, I'm doing it wrong, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think we
But
might be related.
if you think so,
Yeah.
well, I like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. You're so welcome.
It really
You
does
know,
help me feel
and
better.
I think it's healthy to question. You know what I mean? I think it's really healthy because I would say, like, if you look at it from the point of view of the activation of the crown, the crown, when it becomes activated, is very curious.
Mm,
Am I doing this right or am I doing this
yeah,
wrong? What's on the other side of the veil? What's the, it gets really curious. It's not like sure of itself. It's just like, well, what about this? What about that? Am I doing this right? Like, could I be doing it better? Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
So I would, uh,
Yeah, I
you're on the
hear
right
you.
track.
I was going to say, I hear you saying to trust myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially like the more that the intuitive mind kicks in, the thing that I would say is the intuitive mind is very good about picking flowers. I was saying this the other week where, you know, you kind of come to a subject or a thing you might see or a situation that you're in, and it allows things to open up and blossom, right?
Mm, hmm.
The intellect, on the other hand, is very good at committing to burdens, something that you have to sustain because it's really not of light. It might be of thought. It might have energy that's been attracted from the environment through either strong emotion or repetitive thought, but it can't sustain itself. So our mind has to keep thinking of stories and things, and the energy of the thought is what keeps feeding it and keeping it alive. And so another way of saying that is it's a kind of burden.
Hmm.
And at some point, when intuition comes in, it starts to shed the burdens. It starts to shed the I need to, I should have, I'm supposed to, whatever those things are. It starts
Judging.
to
Yeah.
shed those things. And you can depend on those two things like you can depend on the sun and the moon. Like they are that real. Like it is, intuition does what it does, intellect does what it does.
Thank you so much.
You're still welcome.
It really helps.
And then go ahead, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph.